What's up, everybody, family? Here with my friend. Here in my garage. Here with my Lamborghini. Here in the garage. Here in the Hollywood Hills. Checking out my Lamborghini. How to raise strong and kind boys. Do you have a boy? Are you a son? Are you a man, a young man? And you are realizing that you're not the kind of young man that you want to be. You didn't have that father figure. Maybe you did, but it wasn't enough. Gonna make sure that the audio is up here. 1 2 1 2 1 2. There you go. That's better, right? Okay. And so maybe your fitness is not on point, your money is not on point, your spiritual life, your the way you treat women and your wife. Oops, now it's too hot, I think. Maybe still too hot. Okay. Maybe your career's not on point. Maybe you're repeating the same mistakes of your father. You're trying to break curses and generational curses, and you go to church, but you see yourself still kind of not becoming the man that you want to be because of who knows what. You know, I think this is a problem that many have faced, and I have raised an amazing young man in my son David. Shout out to David up there. UCSB, and of course, two amazing girls together with my wife. This isn't just a one-man show. And sometimes I think we need to talk about how do these things happen. Now, my success metric is not money. I'm not against it. I think that we should raise young men who can make money because we have to provide as men. Nor is my metric violence, although I think a young man needs to know how to defend himself from friends, peers, your boss, other employees. I think that for me, my metric, and not just looking at who I am and wanting to repeat or replicate who I am, which is what I think most of us do, which is not a bad thing, but just looking at what God says in His Word, what I see as successful and not successful. I think that the main thing, looking at my father, looking at my father-in-law, looking at my grandfather, who was all three men who were imperfect, but yet men of God, looking at my uncles, looking at some of my brother-in-law. So looking at all of that, I would say that the number one thing is a deep relationship with God. And this is biblical. When God created man, He told man to walk with Him. He told him to walk with Him. He told him that Adam means red, or it means dirt, right? So it means that he came from the dirt, from the dust. And so He told Adam, hey, you belong to me. You were created from me, by me. And so you have my image in you, my identity, meaning you're supposed to be not God, but like me, have similar attributes of holiness, of power, of strength, of love and kindness as God. And again, not that we're supposed to be God, but we're like Christ. We have the image of God in us. I would say second, that we're supposed to then do work, both as a curse and a blessing. Before he became a curse, God told Adam that he was to populate the earth. Well, I guess we'll get to that. That he would name the animals, that he was to work the land. That was after the fall. That he was to walk with God, that he was to, eventually Jesus told John to take care of his mom, of Mary, on the cross. So that whole thing of provision and of work and money is very important. And then third is to multiply. That is what men can do with obviously your wife. And the reason is because we have to populate the earth, and we have to spread the kingdom of God. And plus, is there anything more beautiful than to have a son, a daughter? I mean, I wish we had 10 kids because of the joy and of the heritage, the legacy of the Trigueros name, of the Baker name, my wife's maiden name. Rest in peace, Dr. Dennis Baker. Rest in peace, my papi, David Trigueros Sandoval, or senior. And so, and then of course there are other things. Paul talks about loving our wives sacrificially as Jesus loved the church and gave his life for her. So that's a very important thing, loving your wife. I would say that I don't think this is in the Bible per se. You could say it's definitely seen as a good thing. And God in Exodus commands us not to be promiscuous. But my point was that God commands us to be is it homogamous? Monogamous, sorry. Monogamous. To have one wife. So this thing of multiple wives, girlfriends, hookup culture, that may seem popular or what your body, your biology wants, but it doesn't create a stable family. I don't know any dad who has 2, 3, 4 kids from 3 different women. Oh, Elon Musk, please don't pattern your life after him, or Trump, or any of these men, Tate, or whoever. But I don't know any man who would say, oh yeah, I am glad that I have 5 babies with 5 different women. That's ridiculous. Those kids are going to feel it, suffer. Those women, you're going to feel it. If you're not rich and can't provide, they're going to suffer financially. They're going to suffer from absentee fathers, you name it. So, and for all of this, maybe the last value is grace. There's grace in forgiveness. God can change the world, change your life, whatever you've been through. No matter what you've been through, God can change your life and give you a second, third, 10th chance. I know I'm thankful for the grace that God has shown me. Many of us are. But we are also accountable to God to be men of integrity, men of grace, and then the other things that I mentioned. Because it's too easy to, as I said, you're going to replicate what your father did, the good and the bad. And if you had a great father like I did, I hope to replicate everything about my father, including his being faithful, being a leader, being a musician and pastor, a man of God, an incredible husband and father, imperfect, a man who wrote letters to me, who sacrificed his son. You think of what God did with Jesus, or Abraham with Isaac. My father sacrificed me, even though he hated having me live far from him for really most of his life. He knew that that was the only way that I could live and raise a family and live a blessed life that blessed him and my mom and my sisters and everyone, my whole generation. And I'm very proud of that. And I'm also very proud of the suffering that I've been through, being a war-torn child, a child that grew up without his family, his parents, and his sisters. His whole culture was ripped away from him to the point that on my arms I have my country and my culture as a way to connect with what I lost when I was 11, 12 years old, just a little boy, pre-teen. And it caused a lot of turmoil, a lot of problems, emotionally primarily. But I've succeeded. God has helped me, and I've worked hard to overcome all that. Therapies, medication, of course, Jesus, prayer, church, mentors. Oh my goodness, how many mentors? Writing songs, writing just journaling prayers, friends, doctors, my wife, my goodness, and friends, as I said. And a lot of it has just been my willingness to not give in to the worst, to the worst of me and the worst that is in this world. Even though It would have been easy. And really, I have to say, I was never really tempted by the world. And so, by the grace of God, I never tried to run away from God or from my family or my grandmother who raised me or my wife and my kids and my responsibilities. I made many mistakes. I think I could be more successful professionally if I maybe had been more ambitious and just kind of be more of a boss and be like, I don't care. But I had to deal with a ton of stuff that came from all that trauma of growing up. And I've worked so hard to be successful in ministry. I'm not a CEO. I'm not an entrepreneur. I'm not a business owner, a lawyer, an attorney, or I am a pastor. I am a musician. And so my career path, even though my training is in a very highly paying field, which is computer science and computer engineering. Basically, I could be an IT guy, a software engineer, a code guy, and make hundreds of thousands of dollars. Over the last 30 years, I could have been making $200K per year because that's my training and that's how my mind thinks. But God called me to ministry really since I was born. And as you know, church is a low-paying job, very low. You're talking about just above minimum wage. My wife's a teacher. So together we have raised a decent and blessed life. But my career choice wasn't one of riches. And so, but I've been successful financially because we've invested and we've been very smart and we've saved and we don't waste money on, you see how I dress, you see my car. We save, we have savings, we have investments, we have a 2-story house that we own. I mean, we're paying for it, but all of our cars are paid for. I think only my wife's has a couple years left on a brand new car that we just bought last year, a hybrid, so it saves a ton of gas. All the rest are paid for. All 3 of our kids are college graduates with zero debt. Zero debt. We paid for their college education out of our own pockets as parents, with some of their help as well, but mostly it was us. And so now that they're mostly done, our girls are done and our son is done this year, they're going to graduate with zero debt from a UC school and 2 Cal State schools. Both my wife and I have master's degree from some of the best schools and seminaries. And all of that wasn't free. I mean, seminary, is expensive. I paid for that out of my own pocket. No debt, no loans. I'm not saying that that's bad. Most people have to. But that's where we invested our money, not in expensive clothes or fancy cars. We've invested in our home. We've invested in our education. We've invested in our children. We've invested in our future. We have retirement. My point with all that is not to say, hey, look, my point is you can overcome whatever you've been through. I lost my father when I was 30, when I lost my grandmother right after that. I grew up far from home, Nicaragua. That's not very close. That's ways down. And because of political stuff, it was never safe for me to go back. I basically haven't been back since I was 12 years old. Imagine Ukrainian kids moving to the U.S. Or imagine your child, if you have a 13-year-old, 12-year-old, 11-year-old, moving to, let's say, to Cambodia, to never come back and to learn a new language. And his grandma lived there, but everything else was new and foreign to him. Imagine, and you as parents never saw him again until he was like an adult. I mean, imagine that child, right? And so that's the life of many immigrants. I'm not the only one, but I am so thankful for the hard work. And it's important because that's the example that I'm leaving our kids. That's the example that they've seen in me of love and grace in spite of all that stuff. So when I see people getting all mad about government or work stuff or stupid things, I don't have any patience or understanding for it. Because when you go through war and death and loss and racism and cultural things and immigrant stuff, in light of Jesus and you working hard on yourself, you are filled with grace, not with hate. You're strong both inside and outside, but you're strong and kind. You're strong and you have a heart of gold. You have a humble heart. Now, I've made so many mistakes, and I know my kids have and will, but they've learned to confess, to repent, to go to God, to talk to someone, to talk to their parents. My son just called me 2 weeks ago to talk about his life and how he's doing in this last year and work and being a man. He's 21. And all that a 21-year-old at a college like UCSB deals with, we talk about that stuff. My dad, I literally have a bag right here in one of these bags. My dad wrote me hundreds of letters, thousands and thousands of hours that he spent. He wrote me a Bible of consejos, of advice and verses and little funny drawings and muñequitos and all kinds of. He recorded, I love music, right? He was the first musician. People think I sing well. My dad had a voice 10 times my voice. I mean, I could never sound like my father. You ask anyone. He recorded records. He was well known for his music in the light of Jesus. It wasn't about him being famous. Nothing wrong with that, but it just wasn't his heart. And then he was a nonprofit leader. He was one of the founding families of the church where my mom still goes to church back home. Nonprofit leader, I mentioned, a musician. My mother was a principal, graduated from seminary, teacher, principal, national women's director for her denomination, and my number one example in love and joy and peace, mostly joy. Gozo, mama gozo. And my grandma, of course. So the point is that we all have to look for these examples and look for people who we can imitate. Jesus said, or Paul said, imitate me as I imitate Christ. Who are you imitating? Pastors, your parents, your friends. And who are you not imitating? I have people that I would never want to be like. People that I work with, people that I know, friends or acquaintances. And then there are many other men who I want to be like, who I can learn from. I can think of one man right now that I just saw earlier. I always think, man, I want to be like him. His name is Robbie. Shout out to Robbie. I want to be like Robbie. I want to be like my wife. I want to be like my father-in-law who's in heaven, like my father. And so we have to learn to be humble and strong. Here in my garage, I have my weights. I have my punching bag, my speed bag. I have my treadmill right here. And I've been out of shape for many, many, many years now. I would say 10 years. And I've gained weight and my hair's a mess. And because I've had to focus on my emotional health. And I feel like I'm at a way better place than I was 3-4 years ago. But now it's time to focus on my body again. In my 40s, I was in the best shape of my life, blah, blah, blah. And now I'm getting back into it. I'm working out again, eating less, going to get a haircut soon, wash my car, buy some new clothes. All those things that a man has to take care of himself. And you have to be aware of how people perceive you, the way you dress and think. If you're a Hispanic male like me, you have to be you. I'm proud to be Hispanic, Latin American, Latino, Nicaraguan. I'm not Nicaraguan American. I'm Nicaraguan, full-blooded. Born there, immigrant when I was 11, 12 years old. Well, I first came when I was 8, 9. But anyway, so I'm proud of that, of my heritage. Did you know that one of the theories, I guess, of where the name U.S. America comes from is from Nicaragua? I think the more popular idea or story or history is that it came from I think he was a Portuguese colonizer, basically. But if you look at Wikipedia, it says a very possible alternative is that the name America came from Nicaragua. My point is that I am proud of all that. Even though, yeah, there's racism and immigrant stuff, but I'm thankful for this beautiful country that's given me a place to succeed, to accept us all who are not white, to be in this beautiful country, to watch the Lakers, enjoy life, and live a beautiful life. If I was a white male, would I have more? Maybe, I don't know. Only because maybe I wouldn't have suffered maybe the way I did, being from another country and all that stuff. But I'm blessed. And no matter where you're born, where you grew up, where you live, you can be blessed if you, like I said, follow God and work hard and shun evil. You know, you have to. We also got to talk about evil. Evil is it's the number one way, right? Women, drugs, alcohol, gambling, stealing. Those are all the number one ways that a man is going to lose his blessing. You look at David and Bathsheba. You look at King Saul, pride. David, it was Bathsheba, a woman that wasn't his wife. Peter was his anger. Paul was his pride and his violence, also his anger. Moses was his narcissism. He wanted to be glorious. Many men in the Bible. Abraham was perhaps his drunkenness. Noah, his drunkenness. And these are amazing men of the Bible. Isaac, Jacob was a liar. I mean, Jacob, the father of Israel, right? Jacob, who was the father of the 12 tribes of Israel, was a liar. Literally, his name means deceiver. And so you talk about a lot of men in the Bible who are imperfect and suffered consequences, and yet, like with David, he was a man after God's own heart. I've made so many mistakes, but I can say, even just this last week, I was thinking about this. I'm a man that loves God, that is seeking the heart of God in everything I do, and that's why God keeps blessing me. Today I spent all day and tomorrow and all this week working with musicians for Sunday, doing podcasts, working with first, second, third, fifth graders as they dance and perform songs for the talent show coming up. Working with $1 million sound equipment, working with Latin Grammy Award winners every Sunday and doctors of music. And I get to lead them and work with them and sing in front of hundreds of people every Sunday, maybe thousands someday. Podcasting. I mean, it's a blessing in a beautiful church just 25 minutes away from here. And yet we've been through so many challenges. Rochelle had a health scare last year that was scary. I've had all kinds of anxious things in my body and in my mind. And as I said, lost jobs and failed a bunch of times and made mistakes and character flaws. But yet I keep getting back up and saying, Lord, I want to be about you. Sometimes my pride gets in the way. Sometimes my ego gets in the way. Sometimes I want glory. Sometimes I want success, admiration. And God says, no, just serve me. Stay down. Stay low, David. And every time that I do stay low, he lifts me up. It's biblical, right? Humble thyself in the sight of the Lord, and he will lift you up higher and higher. Now, what I see with a lot of young men is a lot of positive stuff. I have to admit. They have a lot of opportunities. I'm talking from rich to poor, white to black, from Orange County to LA, everywhere. So I work in both places now, OC and here in LA area. And I am concerned about the whole dating scene. I don't know what's happening with young men and getting married young and money. I think that that's kind of an issue. I'm not sure why young men are having a hard time building their lives financially, even though they have college degrees or they have everything they could want. I think for young men these days, you also have a lot of stuff online and bad examples from Tate to Trump to you name it, right? And politics has taken over so many young men and red pill and the macho man thing that these young men who have no idols, or I don't mean idols, but models, or maybe their parents or dads weren't the kind of men that they want to be. They're looking to these strong men, quote unquote, who are promiscuous and have a horrible personal life and no integrity, liars and deceivers. and they think that's my man. I want to be like Trump, like Elon, like Bezos, like whoever. And now there are some of these conservative influencers, but wow, the way they treat people online, so abusive. So, excuse me, is there an ambulance out there? Sometimes our neighbors struggle with stuff, but I think it's okay. So you have to be very aware these days of what young men are consuming. Joe Rogan, I'm not against some of these guys, but what do you see? Just tough macho men who are godless. Joe Rogan is godless, atheist, drug addict. And because he has 10 million followers and has a popular podcast, and because he's what, tough? Again, this toughness thing. Jesus was angry once in his life. He was humble and meek. He became nothing. Jesus or Trump? Jesus or Joe Rogan? Jesus or Elon Musk? A lot of people would say Musk, Trump, Tate, Charlie, whatever his name is. All these guys, influencers, red pill guys, conservative voices who are filled with anger and hate. Those are not my examples. I'm not talking about left and right. I'm just saying so many young Christian men are looking to these influencers who are violent, who are vicious, who are vile, because pastors are weak, parents are weak, dads are absent, men don't have a voice, men aren't being led, men don't know how to be spiritual men anymore. We let our women lead, we let these influencers and politicians lead, and we're dying. Our churches are dying without male leadership, or they abuse that leadership. Men become abusive, like these anarchists and dictators that we see on TV or in other countries, or Putin and all these things. How did we get here? Where it's no longer the 80-year-old Tom who serves at my church and his wife, even though she's not well, she volunteers to take care of kids and to teach kids every, I think, Wednesday at church tomorrow. That's my idol, is Tom, my father, Dennis Baker, not Trump or Elon. I'm not advocating for Biden. I'm not talking about, but Biden was never seen as an example. But yet some of these politicians are. And so many young men and women see these men as the kind of men they want to be leading their country. Ridiculous. We have to go back to seeing the average spiritual man of God as our mentors. I want to be a mentor. I'm in my 50s now. I don't want to be some cool kid with crazy hair. I want to be a mentor. And sometimes I have to realize, I have to ask, you know what? I need to become a better man. I need to change, more humble, more kind, more gentle, more of a leader, more willing to do the hard things, more willing to be tenacious for what I believe in, more bold, less, oh, my background, oh, how I grew up. None of that matters to people in need, to people lost without Jesus, to people without faith and life and hope. This is Easter, right? Lent starts tomorrow. What am I going to do about the millions of people, my neighbors I have a neighbor who needs the hope of God? What am I doing on this Lenten season that's not just leading a band, leading a choir, and getting overwhelmed with church? I mean, are you serious? It's not what my father would do. It's not what my father-in-law did, or my father did, or my mother does, or my wife does. I'm not saying that a church leader, being a church leader isn't important. Of course, if I don't do what I do, well, someone else would do it, but I know we all have a role to play in the body of Christ. But my point is that you can't just fall asleep doing what you do because you play music or you witness to your friends, or you go to church 3 times a week or 5 times a week or once a month. Oh, I got to just make money and get that bag and watch sports and go out for drinks and have a good time and party because I'm young. Ridiculous. If you did that, I did some of that. I think some of it is important because of the mistakes that you make. That's the only thing I think is beneficial about living that kind of life is you realize what a waste that is. What a waste of time and money and energy that is, and how you can ruin your life in a second. A DUI, teen pregnancy, or some STD, or violence, and you get thrown in jail for whatever reason, theft and gun problems, whatever, right? And worse, right? Worse things can happen, especially for us males, where we can become violent very easily. So we have to be very mindful of the evil that's around us. And we have to, one of the things I learned from this amazing man, Tom, I interviewed him just last week. Check out his podcast, my interview with him on my channel here. He was saying that, I asked him, Tom, why are you still talking about Jesus at 80 plus with cancer and all these things that you've dealt with? He said, because no one will silence me anymore. Because it's my calling in life is to talk about Jesus and what he's done in my life and how he's healed my body. And here he is. This man is not very strong. He is aging, and his wife is not well. And they sit in the front row at church of the band service, which is loud, and I'm there every Sunday. They stand for every prayer. Sometimes I'll say, just you guys can grab a seat. They stand and they won't sit down. No matter if people say, please grab a seat, they're going to be respectful and pray and do the prayers standing and do every song standing. They're in their 80s, almost 90 years old. Elon Musk, are you kidding me? I want to be like Tom and Annis. I want to be like my father-in-law and his wife, like my dad and my mom. I want my kids to be like me, Rochelle and I. We have to create content. We have to talk. We have to, like Tom, talk about it. God has healed me from anxious and depression thoughts and all kinds of craziness in my head. God has healed me, and he heals me every day. I'm not saying that it's something I never deal with, but my goodness, has he healed me? There's a song that we sing. What's it called? Don't tell me he can't do it, something like that. And it talks about creating or how God can heal mental health stuff. And I said on Sunday, like me, he hasn't healed me of cancer, God forbid, but he's healed me of my anxious thought. He hasn't healed me of addictions, but I know many people who he has. Shout out to my family at Victory Outreach. So you have to talk about it. Testimonies, right? We have to go back to testimonies because the world is running fast away from God and towards politics and towards money and fear and hate so fast. I've fallen for it and I'm tired of it. I have to go back to love and grace and the gospel of Jesus Christ. That's what it's about, man. I'm just checking my message here from my friends. They're all texting me. Probably some Laker stuff. Okay, well, that's all I have for now. Thanks for being here. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you're thinking, what you're doing. And like I said, stop being normal. Stop being some average Joe that's just doing your little thing here, your little ministry. You got to go big. The world is, politicians are. You and I, as men of God, have to go big, not only for the kingdom of God, but for your kids, your sons and daughters who are watching you. Thanks again for watching. Leave me a comment below. Tell me what you think. If you need my coaching, I coach. I have a complimentary coaching session that I start with, and then it's a paid service if you want to continue. Email me, leave me a comment, and let's get started. Thanks again for being here. I'll see you next time. Adios.